Yes, the stars have come out for the MLB playoffs. And to me, Holly, this is one of the reasons why this year's playoffs have been so exciting is the stars, the $300 million players, the biggest names in the game are all showing up. And it's been very exciting. And we're going to dive into that today in our Hitting with Holly podcast here with Todd Hollandsworth. As always, let's take a little housekeeping. Please like, subscribe to the channel. We are steamrolling, Holly, to 2.2 million views since we relaunched this in February, and that's exciting. But I also, before we get rolling, we're based here in South Florida. The state of Florida has gone through a lot in terms of the hurricanes the last couple of days and couple of weeks. And certainly, we're bringing these podcasts. We know a lot of our audience is from Florida. We know a lot of you guys are dealing with some real serious issues, especially in the central parts of the state, the Tampa all the way through the middle of the state and even Fort Myers and anything on the West Coast. So our thoughts are certainly there with you people. And we hope to give you a little entertainment, a little diversion, and as well as really dive into baseball as we get rolling on Hitting with Holly. Todd Hollandsworth, good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Joe, and you're absolutely right. Thoughts and prayers to all of our friends here in Florida, through the northern parts of obviously Florida, from earlier this week, and I think even Helene, the hurricane from a week or so ago that just ravaged the southeast so much. I obviously watching the news and seeing everything that's going on, it kind of reminds me, Joe, and I'll try to tie it together because I was thinking on this. The one thing that I have been reminded of in the last week or so is the human spirit, and it's very evident in playoff baseball, and you can kind of see how I'm going to wrap both of these together. We have seen nothing but just people coming together to serve each other, to humbly help each other, to love each other, and to make each other's lives and situations that we're all dealing with that are just, tragic, horrific in some levels. I mean, you see the devastation, everything that's happened with these hurricanes, whether it's the flooding, the home destruction, the storm surge. I mean, we can go in a million different directions with this, but we've seen people, break political lines, ideas, whatever you want to call it, to understand and to love their neighbor as they love themselves. And to me, that's what this is about. I know it doesn't make the situation any easier for a lot of people, but seeing the human spirit and seeing people work together, it is evident because it's the one time of year, you've heard me say this, Joe, a million different times, right? In a million different ways, especially what playoff baseball is. It's the most selfless time of year in our sport. And you saw some of that. You saw it yesterday in some bunting. You saw it in moving guys along. You saw it differently, and the game is so different in the postseason than it is during the regular season, for the most part. And you see how all of this can kind of tie together. Baseball is just supposed to be that. I remember playing and somebody saying to me one time, as we were entering the summer months and all the other sports shut down and only baseball's going and baseball's there for you every day. That's the great comfort of the game of baseball and why we love it so much, is that it's there for you every day. It'll give you some sense of relief. It will give you, a place to go, a place to see, a place to watch, a place to be entertained. Everybody says, you guys play way too many games. This goes on way too long, but we're always there for you and we're always on. And I do believe that even over this last week here in the state of Florida, because I've heard it from people, what was it, just a day or two ago, where we had all 4 playoff series going. There was one game after another. And through everything that was going on around them, they were able to find those moments of escape, those moments of, togetherness with their family or with their sons in the game. Even if it was just for a little while, able to tune in, watch the game, love the game, and then kind of get back to dealing with what they were dealing with. So, I commend baseball, obviously, for, being there and being that. But and the players themselves, I love it. I saw so many examples, even over the last few days, of watching a lot of baseball myself, because, even in the southern part of the state, we shut everything down. There's been no baseball, no football games were canceled. School's been out, even though, the southern tip down here where we are, down in the Miami area, we were protected and covered through a lot of this. We got some winds. We didn't get much rain. But to the people to the north, there's been a lot of damage and a lot of, just a real big mess. But through it all, baseball's been there. I'm certainly happy to say that it's been fun to watch, and that there's been this outlet for so many of us to be able to, just enjoy baseball, even if it's just for a moment in the day.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's also when we see the games being played, it's that return to normalcy feel that, and I know here we're doing this on Friday morning, that there could be, some high school scrimmages, preseason, fall ball games going on here in South Florida, as well as high school football as everyone's returning. We obviously saw the damage to Tropicana Field as well, and the Rays are going to have to deal with a home stadium situation. And again, our prayers, our thoughts are with our brothers, and we're a family here in the state of Florida, and the baseball community, the sports community, we're all part of that, and we feel for you. But Ali, like I said, we'll turn to the playoffs, and there are many different angles to go, because I love all of it. I love the underdog players. I love this or that. But I really, I jotted it down. I mean, we're seeing the big names rise. We're seeing Francisco Lindor, Giancarlo Stanton, Mookie Betts, Garrett Cole, Manny Machado, Shohei Ohtani, Pete Alonso is going to get his payday, Fernando Tatis, Jose Ramirez. Like, these are the $300 million class, all of them coming through. And we always talking about, football, baseball. Well, you always have Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, the superstars of the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, obviously, rising, the Hall of Fame caliber players. In a short baseball season, we don't always see that, but like I said, Lindor, the grand slam, next into the CS. Jose Ramirez with a big home run for the Guardians, yesterday, and and we've seen what Mookie Betts has been doing. Shohei's had homers. Manny Machado, we've seen what he's doing as well. And just kind of your thoughts on the big guys stepping up at the biggest moments.
Well, and that's the thing. It really is a reflection of how different playoff baseball is. You're right, Joe. We play this monstrous season, 162 games every day, only 18 days off in 6 months. Guys are tired. Guys have been grinding. Some of these guys have had 650 at bats over the course of 6 months. They don't miss games. They're on the field each and every day. They're there for the long haul, as we like to say. And we've seen that. And of course, we always wish that our favorite stars, and your team, if your team's in the playoffs, you know what I'm talking about here. You want your guy, your team, your leader, your Jose Ramirez, your Lindor. You want them to come through. You want to see them be the player that they're paid to be, so to speak. And it doesn't always happen. In fact, I think a lot of times, more times than not, it doesn't happen, because you're right. It gets short in the postseason, and you got to get hot quick, and you got to see the ball quick. So, and I feel those players a lot of times may feel that, because you may run into a team that's always had your number. Everybody else may not know that, but they may have had your number all year. You may have had an incredible season, but this team may have had your number. You may have dropped the 3 for 20 against them with 7 strikeouts, and you enter in, you might be feeling good about yourself, but this team, for whatever reasons, had your number. And so you got to put all that stuff aside and really just kind of focus on how to find team wins and get the wins, because at the end of the day, the win is the most important thing. The clubhouse knows that. The fan base knows that. The organization knows that. It isn't about you going 2 for 4 every day, but when you do see your heroes and the guys who are the mainstays, when we, I always throw this test out to people, because it really does show you the turnover in Major League Baseball. Take your favorite team, and if you're good enough to name me 20 players from 5 years ago, you're the greatest fan I've ever seen. And you know what I'm saying, right, Joe? I mean, because that's how much turnover there is. Yep. But the players that you remember the Lindors. That's the easy answer. It's the first answer that comes out of your mouth. The Jose Ramirez. He's been with the Cleveland Indians. But you're probably right. I can't name 18 of the 19 guys who have been with him through his career in Cleveland, right? Because the roster constantly turns over. And so that's kind of who we do hone in on. Even from a distance, we know who their star player is. And when we see them come through, it certainly not only validates them individually, but certainly validates how good they are as a player and how good they are for the sport. On social media, which I do very little, but I was very happy to see, this story gain some traction and really start to kind of get past the game of baseball, which was the Lindor Grand Slam. And really, it wasn't about the Grand Slam or Lindor coming through. And if you've been watching the Mets, and if you've been watching their playoff run, and if you've been watching their September, Lindor's been there through it all. I mean, this dude's come up with big hit after big hit after big hit. But the Grand Slam and the way that he handled himself on the Grand Slam wasn't a bat flip, wasn't a pirouette around first base, didn't take it too slow, didn't take it too fast, acted like he'd been there before and played the game with respect and integrity to himself, to his family, to his teammates, and to the opposition, which I talk about constantly. It was so classy to see. Who didn't in that moment think that Lindor was going to come through in some capacity? I felt like he would. You can see the tempo at which he's playing right now. You see how he's seeing the game. The game has slowed down incredibly, which is where you want to be as a player and certainly as a hitter. The game is coming to him. But he capitalized in the moment with a huge moment with that Grand Slam, and now they're moving on. But with that being said, the way that he handled himself for the first time in a long time really brought a lot of good, positive attention to our sport because of the way that he handled himself. It wasn't the moment. We would still be talking about Lindor coming through if it was a double in the gap, because they still ultimately would have won the game. But it was the Grand Slam, and it was the character, and it was everything that I love to see in our players today. Stanton living it out over the last two games in Kansas City, big hit after big hit, and nothing about him is like, look at me, it's all about me. Every time I see these guys, it's even in their celebrating, they're celebrating back to their dugout, and they're celebrating with their teammates, which is exactly what you want to see, and that's what our support really was founded on a long time ago. And it's good to see our veteran players, our star players, coming through and handling themselves with such high levels of integrity and character, which is what I really stand for more than anything else.
But, I kind of go, because I believe Lindor's Grand Slam was in the 6th inning. Mm-hmm. And I know that one of the announcers made note, as you did, he didn't really just overdo it with a ridiculous bat flip and just go. I think I saw that as, and what I enjoyed seeing about that, I saw an awareness of the moment. Now, if that's the 9th inning and that's a walk-off Grand Slam, it's a little bit different. Even maybe the bottom of the 8th, because now you just need 3 outs to go. But there was still a lot of baseball to be played against a team with 95 wins, certainly capable of erasing a 4-1 deficit. So I thought that, because I think way too much of our culture is that highlight moment, and that could come in the 1st inning of Grand Slam. They act like they go nuts, like they won the World Series, and they end up losing the game. But the viral moment is the bat flip, is the 10 million view, video, the celebration, whatever chain or thing in the dugout they put on, that becomes the moment. And the fact it showed to me an awareness of the task at hand is much more than the Grand Slam. It's closing the deal. Now what? We move on to the next round. And you noted about Giancarlo Stanton, who, transparent, we've covered him. I covered him the day he was drafted. One of probably one of my certainly most favorite players on the Marlins I ever covered. Was proud to cast a vote for him in 2017 that got him the MVP, because I had to vote that year, and he won by a narrow margin, and I'm happy and proud of my vote to vote for him for MVP that year. And he's really, and Holly, because as a Marlin, I don't think he played in a winning season. So there was nothing really to play for. So you didn't know the clutch factor aspect of him. But certainly as a playoff performer, now obviously a World Series could cement him, and will, as he approaches 500 homers, we'll have a Hall of Fame discussion down the line with him. But this certainly is elevating, and we're seeing what he can do in the biggest moments. And we're seeing, as you noted with Lindor, the slowing the game down, the doing what it takes to get the job done. And we know when he's hot, he can carry a team easily for a good stretch of games.
Well, and I think both players are doing a little bit of that right now. Stanton kind of stepped out. Obviously, it would be game 3, which was his big game, the 3-hit game, including the home run late. I'll say one more thing on Lindor, but I really do, and I certainly understand exactly what you're saying, Joe. You're right; it did happen in a moment in that, but I think even the feel of that game was that there wasn't going to be a whole lot of offense that day. And if he came through with
Correct.
a grand slam in that month, I mean, because we were tuned into that game and we saw it, and the quality of at-bats in that game were not particularly strong for either side really until the Lindor grand slam. And it obviously ended up being the decisive home run. But at that moment in time, both the Phillies and Mets were having a hard time putting together quality at-bats back to back. Mets were getting traffic out there, but they couldn't get anybody home. And the Phillies, I mean, they were just struggling offensively, and that's really what that ultimately comes down to. I will piggyback on what you said about Stanton, because you're absolutely right. That was my first year broadcasting for the Marlins. It was my first year in the booth here in South Florida, and it was a privilege and an honor. The one thing that I'll even talk about in that moment, which most people forget, because I know that Giancarlo is very unorthodox to most people's eyes, the way that he approaches hitting. People don't realize how big and strong he is, and it's, to him, he really gets down to that simplicity of see ball, hit ball. And when he does, the exit velocity is still better than anybody else in the game of baseball. Every year he ends up leading that category. Most of the time it's usually on and out. And I know that Aaron Judge and obviously Juan Soto get all the attention now. So Stanton is, where he has been the guy in the lineup most of his career, he has now kind of slid, a little bit out of that limelight and has fallen into a secondary role, but it hasn't changed how he can impact the baseball game. And we certainly saw that in the last two games in Kansas City. I love the conversation because people forget about this, but the swing transformation, Joe, the year he won the MVP was the year that he went through the swing transformation. And there was so much talk about how many mistakes he was making by closing up his stance and getting off the plate. And I remember a few conversations I had with him around the batting cage, because I always remember, and I'm always free to pass on this great knowledge that Reggie Smith used to give me all the time and fill my mind with ideas that, were ideas that would build my confidence. And sometimes it would be unorthodox. It wouldn't always be mechanically superior, correct, or it was always identifying what made you feel good about who you were. And ultimately, that's where we start with hitting, is you have to be comfortable doing what you do to the highest of level and hungry for more, knowing that there's always going to be a critic. There's potentially that. And I remember when he closed off his stance and he moved off the plate and kind of took this off-field approach, people were like, this is never going to work. He shouldn't close off his stance. It's going to tie him all up. It's going to complicate his swing. And Joe, the simple answer without diving into this for 10 minutes is that he went on and won an MVP. So he proved to the world that you can make that adjustment, that you can close off your stance, move off the plate, quiet things down, and just play, simply see ball, hit ball, and drive the ball to right field, which he did so many times that year. People just didn't realize how much power he has and how much strength that he's got in his swing. So it was very easy for him to simplify. Not a lot of bat movement, just keeps his fingers loose. In fact, I heard him talking about it on the broadcast yesterday, just his unorthodox nature now with the new rules that are in play about having to stay in the box. If you watch Stanton really just stands there until he sees something that he likes and he'll take a swing, but he really keeps his toe hold and he keeps his front foot down and nothing moves. He just stays in the box. He doesn't call time. He doesn't back out. He doesn't play with his batting gloves. He's truly ready to hit from pitch one to pitch whatever ends the at bat. And he just stands in the box. And they were kind of noticing it, how different it is from Soto, in that Soto's a little bit more animated. There's more foot movement. There's engagement. He talks to the catcher. He talks to the home plate umpire. Soto talks to the pitcher, just with
swaying, the tracking the pitch,
right,
all the antics,
facial expressions. He's communicating things, because I've watched the pitchers reacting to him, which tells me that. And Stanton does it the complete opposite. And I think it's so interesting to see, and certainly for us to learn and understand that there's always more than one way to do it.
Well, that's probably a good time to bring into a popular segment here, Holly, on the channel is we bring in the video component and we break things down. The last few weeks when we unveiled this, we've been doing the high school kids because of the rain. I didn't really have anything fresh to do, so we haven't been out to the field because there's been storms coming. So let's reel in, bring in some video from Giancarlo Stanton against the Kansas City Chiefs, Royals in the last couple of days. This is an RBI single, I believe, with a guy on third. Now, Holly, I know you're an outfielder, but talk about moving the infield in, for Stanton. And I'm looking, and Miguel Garcia, the third baseman, wasn't having much of it. He was pretty deep. But here, that's all he's looking to do, get that run home. As you know, very short, basic. What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, this is kind of classic Stanton. The one thing that I'll say from when we had him here in Miami to what I've seen with the Yankees is that he's a little bit more upright in his upper half from his waist up. So he's a little bit taller there. Where before, I think he was a little bit more bent over, more into his presentation, how he kind of sets himself at home plate. So he does stand a little bit taller, even though you do see his knees significantly bent there. But not much has changed. I mean, this is a man who hits a ball harder than anybody else in baseball. Yes, I've said anybody else in baseball because every year he proves it. He always ends up having the highest exit velocity when he finds the barrel. But the question you have to ask yourself, is he finding the barrel as consistently as he used to? Maybe not as much, but still very, very solid, certainly a game changer. And what you see in Stanton is a very simple approach. He's spread out. He wants to control his lower half so that his top half doesn't get out over the front side. But when he starts to find the fastball, I always loved Stanton because Stanton and I, we had, communication together before he ended up getting traded to the Yankees. And, I would always get down to the cage and talk to him. And he's an open book about everything he wants to do at the plate. Now, the one thing that you learn about Stanton is that Stanton is like no other. And see, that's the thing that you love talking about it because he's so unique that getting into his mind and understanding his approach is going to be different than everybody else. He knows that he can beat up a baseball. And what I mean by that, we called it bully ball. Like he can bully a baseball. He doesn't have to hit a ball off the barrel to hit a ball out of the yard. This is a guy that can hit a ball just about anywhere on the bat. And as long as the bat doesn't break, there's a chance it might leave the yard. That's how strong he is. This is a man who takes his health very seriously, his pride very seriously, lots of time in the weight room. He's a big, strong guy, but he wants that simple approach. The one thing about the stillness in his approach, which I still say to everybody else because it applies to all of us, is that he keeps his head still. Watch, no matter what happens with his swing, no matter where his hands go, it's all about keeping his head still so that he can identify the pitch. You can almost see Stanton when they pan in on him when he's in the box, and you see it right there. Not much has changed. I mean, he's really just rotating around a strong lower half and letting his muscles do the talking. Hit this ball off the end of the bat, and it still ended up being a rocket through the middle. That's who this guy is. He hits mistakes very well. He hits balls, that don't come off the barrel very far. He's got more room for error than most hitters. But when he gets locked in, like we've seen lately, like last night, I can't remember the last time I've seen him do it. But I always knew that this was Stanton at his best because there is still the one home run that we've always talked about here in Miami and that I talked about for an awful lot because it was still probably the most impressive home run I've ever seen. He gave us a glimpse of it last night. It's not this base hit up the middle. But he took a pitch on the outside part of the plate last night and drove it down the first base line all the way into the corner for a double. I mean, it was a great swing. Stanton going down the right field line. Joe, you'll remember this. He hit a home run at Marlins Park. It was an absolute laser, probably about 20 feet off the ground down the right field line for a home run, and it tucked just right inside the right field foul pole. I couldn't remember.
We joked that the first baseman almost jumped for it.
Right. That's where I was going with it. That is what Stanton can do. It's one of the most impressive home runs to this day that I've ever seen.
It was like a 12-degree launch angle, something ridiculous.
Yes.
Basically, what anyone else, it's a line drive into the outfield. But the difference is the carry. It just stayed that height and carried nestled right inside the right field foul pole. It was really you talk about the when he broke the scoreboard against what's the name? The soft toss and guy who threw forever, the lefty from the Phillies and everyone else. When he broke the scoreboard.
I don't remember who it is.
Jamie Moyer. Yeah, against Jamie Moyer when he broke the scoreboard.
Right.
He hit it off him. He basically retired Jamie Moyer on that one. But then they had this one. Those were what Holly's talking about. Yeah, the size. Holly, I'm going to mention something because I just thought about watching this. Obviously, there's a guy on third here. He's trying to get the go-ahead run in. And he doesn't need to – everyone's looking to elevate the ball, but when you put the infield in and he hits the ball over 110 as regularly as he does, the infield a ground ball for him is just as effective as a fly ball to the outfield. So it's a matter of just contact at that point to me. So that's a unique situation. There might be 1% or less than that in baseball that could have even that mindset. Obviously, I think he'd take the sac fly, but he just is like, I'll hit it hard. I don't care where it is. Well, ground ball in the air. I don't need to deal with what 99.9% of normally physical attributed athletes can do.
Well, and it's actually a very fun conversation to have because it really does get to the heart of the game. And, we get to this situation where, you have a runner on third and there's less than 2 outs. And, because we see this one in high school all the time. And I see kids struggle with it a lot. Guys over there and, your coach down at third base is yelling at you, get the ball in the air to the outfield. And, even that thought alone starts to make most that I know, it did to me all the time, my mind would start to kind of play back into swing analysis, my own swing analysis. Do I have to start manipulating my swing on a ball, on a particular ball? Like, if it always felt to me like it complicated things because the obvious answer is, yeah, well, I know a sacrifice fly will do it. So will a base hit. So will a deep drive to the outfield, whatever. I mean, there are multiple answers there, but when you kind of get locked in on the specifics of what your coach is telling you, you've now put yourself into this place where I think we all naturally start to self-evaluate. Like, okay, I need to lift the ball here. I need to have a different approach than what I've been doing. I've been hearing Coach Todd talk about staying flat through the zone. We're talking line drives, exit velocity. It's what he talks about all the time. But now I need to make sure that I drive the ball, but it's got to be in the air because we got to get the sacrifice fly, right? That's the idea. That's the minimum. That's the standard, right? I mean, that's the obvious answer. What you have to start thinking about is who are you? What do you need to do to come through in that situation? There's an old saying, right, Joe? If you're a 300 hitter and you pull your infield in, what do you become?
Oh yeah, you got 350, whatever the number, 400
hitter, right? That's what everybody says. You add 100 points to your batting average. Well, that should also free your mind up. I mean, really, what it comes down to is you getting your pitch and just doing something with it and making sure that you drive it. And Stanton proved it right there. I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, you pull the infield in. You just need to find the barrel. And more times than not, each infielder has one step in each direction. And if he doesn't get it, the ball's going to go through. That's really how it's played. But in that situation right there, I love that Stanton doesn't look down to there isn't this delivering of the message. Only a sacrifice fly will work here in this situation. That is
go on, big guy, get it done.
Right. It's not the truth. It's not. It's, really what what I'm hoping your coach is trying to tell you is find the barrel, hit the ball hard, and play the game. That's the answer. The answer to this riddle. It's not a riddle, but it certainly feels like it. And it's like, okay, I got to do all these things differently now in this at bat. No, you don't. You don't do things any differently. You don't swing at a split finger in the dirt, but that's the point. Get the ball up. Look for something to drive. That's the only thing that you change. You don't change your approach. Giancarlo Stanton in that at-bat, that particular at-bat looked no different than the man that we saw in the other at-bats, hitting a breaking ball for a long home run to left or driving a ball down the right field line. And that's the point. The point is finding the barrel. And when you find the barrel consistently, you start to get hits. And what Stanton do in the last couple of ball games is I think he was got 4 or 5 hits in the series now. So yeah, in those 2 games, and he was kind of their offense. That's it. He tells you it. It's just that simple. I got you. I'm going to find the barrel because I'm working on finding the barrel. So he gets in the box. He finds the barrel, bangs one through the middle, and there you go. Boom, you're off and running. And that's what you're looking for. Just because the situation tells you to do something specific, it's always about the minimum. It's never about the maximum. But when we're in the box, we should be thinking about the maximum. I never one time in my entire life got in the box thinking it's time to walk. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can't get in the box with that mindset. You can tell yourself, I'm going to be disciplined, but if this guy makes a mistake out over the plate, then I'm going to come through. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to find a way to get that.
So is it, Holly, then the answer is just whatever it takes to get him home then?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Joe. That's the mindset. If it's a broken bat line drive over the shortstop's head, it's a broken bat line drive over the shortstop's head. You've done the job. That's the mindset. Now, really what you're just saying, get the ball up. That's, for me, because I was a high ball hitter. So that's the way that my mind worked. A lot of times coaches would get the ball up and I'm on board with that, but this isn't changing your swing or trying to drop and drive because I've got to hit a deep fly ball to get the job done. It's the same situation when you have a runner on second base and nobody out and your coach says, you get the guy over. Okay, well, you're asking for the minimum, but I'm looking for the maximum. And that's my mindset. He's not saying just give yourself up to give yourself up. I remember I did that one time very early in my career. And Reggie Smith, who I love dearly and just taught me so much about hitting and so much about the game, pulled me aside. I think we were in instructional league. In fact, I know we were in instructional league. And so, I was hitting second that day. I think it was like my second year in professional baseball. And we were in instructional league playing an instructional league game. We had a runner on second base. And I swung at a curveball on the outside part of the plate, rolled over a ground ball to the right side. Of course, it advances the runner to third. And all of my teammates are like, way to go. Great job. Giving me high fives job. Reggie's waiting for me down at the end of the dugout. And he's like, no, absolutely not. Come here. We need to talk. And so we had a conversation and I was like, okay, well, where's this going? Because I just did my job and I was feeling, proud of my efforts, high and mighty. He's like, you just swung at a first pitch curveball, first pitch of the at-bat. This guy's got nothing to get you out with, and you just gave yourself up. He goes, you would have been better off sacrifice bunting. He goes, if you're going to give yourself up that way, that's not who we see you to be. We see you to be to keep the line moving. You need to drive this guy in. If it's an 0-2 pitch and it's a curveball away, and you've had a good at-bat to that point, maybe you were right on the fastball, but you fouled it off, or you took a close pitch that wasn't your pitch, and the umpire called it a strike, but you found yourself in that position, and then you got the guy over with a slow ground ball to the right side. That's what we're talking about in that situation. So we're talking about the minimum, Joe, not the maximum. The maximum is do your job, drive the guy in, get yourself to second base, hit a double, hit a triple, hit a home run.
Now you got a big inning.
At the end of the day, if you get yourself in that spot, then you got to get him over. And that's the bare minimum. And that's really what coaches are talking about. Same like with a runner on third in less than 2 outs. The bare minimum is a sacrifice fly, but we want all the other things too. So let's start there.
Yeah. Now we're gonna shift to one of Big G's double. I think this is coming up. Yeah. Get this going. Cue it up from the beginning. That's a little bit more of the force we're used to seeing from this man.
This is great. I always love it when broadcasters and I really did enjoy listening to this series, but when broadcasters, they bring golf clubs into play that nobody even really knows what they are. I think I heard Bob Costas.
3 irons.
I think he dropped 1 iron. If anybody knows what a one iron is, most kids have no idea what a 1 iron is, but it's a driving iron. And he did. This was a driving iron off the left center field wall, about 390 feet. Very similar to the home run that we were describing down the right field line, except this one went into the left center field gap. But this is what he can do. I mean, you see Stanton at his best, right? So this ball's on its way. And I always saw this with him. Outfielders have no shot. There's very few players, even in our game today, that hit the ball with such authority where you actually watch outfielders know that the ball's been driven over their head immediately. And so they get themselves into field the ball off the wall position. A lot of times we're watching guys will run this ball down with the idea that they're going to catch it, but it's hit with such authority that it's like another level. And you know the minute it comes off the bat, you got no shot at catching this. Other players hit that ball, it's very different, not coming with the same velocity. You probably try to go after it differently. But Stanton, when he's finding the barrel, it's a hit the minute it comes off the barrel because he hits it with so much authority.
Talk about bat speed here.
Stanton, he's got very good bat speed. He's got great hands for a big guy. That's the strength. The strength of his game, to me, has always been his hands. As big as he is, as strong as he is, as impressive as he is to look in a uniform, you see him right there. I mean, he's just absolutely jacked. But the one thing that people very rarely talk about is how quick his hands are and how powerful they are. I mean, his rotation from his waist up is obviously very strong. He does eliminate his lower half a little bit. If you watch on his backside, he doesn't always completely come all the way around. His backside, his back foot will stay stationary. It won't kind of come up on the toe as we were talking about last week.
Let's see if I can get that.
He anchors himself, and that's kind of what he does. He tries to anchor his lower half in the box so that he can eliminate it, doesn't get out over his front side, doesn't jam himself, gives him plenty of space. He loves the ball middle away. I mean, if you're going to feed him middle away, you're going to get killed all day long. But the bottom line is this: when he's on his game and you're not throwing or commanding the inside part of the plate, because we all know that's really truly where you got to get him out. And that was the swing evolution of Stanton, was that guys were pounding him in so much. But even this pitch is middle in just a little running action there. But he kind of just cleaned it out. I mean, he got to the spot before the ball did and drove it off the wall. And when you're a pitcher, I can only imagine what it must feel like to know that if you make a mistake inside the strike zone right now to him from 95 down, that it's either going to get hit out of the yard or it's going to be an absolute rocket somewhere. And it can absolutely intimidate you.
How much you think, and as you know, you point out the zones where he can do the most damage. The pitchers clearly know the zones. They're not trying to make the mistake. But when a pitcher has the fear of a mistake, how much you think that factors into advantage Stanton when, this guy knows he can't make a mistake? He'll either walk him, he may hit him with the pitch, he may throw a wild pitch, because it's like anything. If you feel, I can't miss this spot, bad things can happen.
Right.
How much you think that makes you miss
that I think
spot?
it factors in a little bit. I think you saw it with the Kansas City Royals. This was talked about throughout the entire series. And I think that most Royals fans, they're waking up this morning and they're talking about a lack of offense. I mean, that's the easy one to jump on. But when you look at how this series truly played itself out, there wasn't a ton of offense really from beginning to end, just a little bit at the very beginning of the series. But the idea is that there wasn't much to come by, but walks ended up being the conversation. And what does that tell you? Uncharacteristically, we saw the Royals walk a lot more hitters than they usually do, especially in a series like this. I mean, they know it's on the line, but again, they were trying to avoid the power of what the Yankee lineup possesses. And that fear alone spoke. I mean, carefully pitching to Stanton an awful lot of times. Look at Judge, same story there. Stanton is kind of, as I mentioned, fallen into a position where he's not he's a superstar, but he's not in the superstar position. If he's on anybody else's team, he's hitting 30s in the middle of their lineup, but he's in this, incredible, middle lineup that is probably the best in baseball right now between the three of them. And when he's cleaning up and when he's the guy that's being thought of the least, that's what makes you the most dangerous. He did more damage in these two games in Kansas City, and really nobody else was doing much of anything. So he was their offense, and that's who he can be. He still possesses the power. He still possesses the strength. Yes, he doesn't get around the bases. Yes, I know at times people are like, why doesn't he run hard? He's trying to keep himself healthy. He's had so many leg issues, so many problems with his lower half that the Yankees are like, listen, you do what you got to do to keep yourself in the lineup and on the field.
Yeah.
Lengthens their lineup out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm finished.
I was always feeling as someone who's seen Stanton and knows, well aware of his injury history. And it always was, and I think we saw it in 2017 when he won the MVP. Once because he played like 150 games, I believe, that year. And he hits 59 homers. It was always, what can he do? And it's always just the matter of the misreps. Like the year he had the hamate injuries, he played like 70 games. He followed that up with the year he got hit in the face, and the year he had the hamstring type things, and so he was always kind of like 100 games, 120 games, 90 games, and so he was always kind of chasing it and having those moments. But when the repetitions come for him, he's as dangerous as they can be, and then when you put him in a stacked lineup, it just is, that's where legends are made, and this is where his legacy, and that's why I'm really happy for him. And wouldn't be a Stanton highlight reel if we didn't have a home run. So let's bring in the breaking ball that he hit a couple of nights ago. That was the difference.
Yeah, and I'll add this, Joe, great points by you right there. But I've always felt with Stanton, and he may not say this openly, but I can't help but say it, and I'm certainly going to give it to everybody. And we, obviously had the privilege of knowing him on a day-to-day basis just a few seasons ago when he was winning the MVP. A lot of times, and I see this in New York now, particularly in the lineup that he's in. You mentioned a lot of the keys: staying healthy, staying on the field, doing what he can do to a baseball. But I'll add this. One of the best things that happened to him in 2017 was Marcell Ozuna, was the fact that he had everyday internal competition. And you hear me talk about that probably way too much. But that's my point. when you have a teammate who's pushing you, who's driving you, and Marcell Ozuna in any other year probably is getting a lot more MVP consideration than he did in 17 because Stanton won the award. But I would watch these guys in batting practice every day. I'd watch them on the field. I'd watch them in the dugout. It's so much fun because these are two guys that were pushing each other. They were making each other better, and they were game changers, and they were part of a dynamic offense, a dynamic outfield. Christian Yelich, people forget Christian Yelich was playing that year, and Christian Yelich, who was on the verge of winning himself a couple of MVPs in the future with in Milwaukee, I believe, in Milwaukee. I don't know if
he won the next year in 18.
Right, he won an MVP, but he didn't win two. I couldn't remember. He won one MVP.
Yeah, he ended up with finishing second in 19 to Bellinger.
But two MVP caliber years is where I was going with that. But my point is, this was their outfield. And so the internal competition on a daily basis wasn't always who's the starting pitcher. It was like, what's the guy next to me doing? What's the other guy doing next to me? And we have this dynamic outfield. Let's be really, really good together, feed off each other, and put together, just an incredible run. And I think that internal competition pushes players to the next level. Stanton, what we're seeing in that great swing right there, and I'll get into that in a second, he's got that automatically built in New York, right? He's got Judge, who has just absolutely put up one of the most historic seasons ever. Juan Soto, who probably is not getting enough attention based on Judge. And, oh, by the way, Giancarlo Stanton's part of this lineup, right? 27 homers, 72 RBIs. Yeah, his OPS was a tick under 800. Yes, he's a little bit different. But, I mean, it's pretty interesting to me, Joe. You could take Stanton and put him in a few of these other playoff teams, not all of them, but a few of them, and he'd be the guy. He'd be their guy with those numbers. Yet he's the one who's talked about the least. And it wasn't really until Stanton showed up in Kansas City in a big way that we started talking about him. This is Stanton. And now this is a 3-1 pitch, if I remember correctly. I'm looking right now. It is. Yeah,
is it
right.
2-2?
So, yeah, it was a 3-1 pitch.
3-1.
Yeah, it was a 3-1 pitch. He put together a quality at bat. When you're pitching and you see Stanton just taking pitch after pitch, you should be really nervous because that means this guy's locked in and he's looking for one thing. And when he gets it, it's going to be ugly. I'm not sure he got all of this. He might have got under it a little bit, but look what getting under it just a little bit.
Yeah, he got it over in the
this ball is
over the state. He cleared the bullpen. Yeah.
Well, that's the point. The mistake is a big mistake. He hits no doubt home runs, and that's who Stanton is. Look at the bat wiggle, just nice and calm. Kind of was anticipating something middle in. I don't think that he was sitting breaking ball right there. I think he was actually sitting fastball away, and this was a pitch that sped his swing up a little bit because it was breaking obviously back inside, and it was just a rotation swing. Finished his swing, and it turns into a long home run. He knows what he's capable of doing. Stanton will tell you himself, what is my objective each and every at bat that I have is to find exit velocity, is to find the barrel. When I find the barrel, I find the hits. He doesn't go around promote, I have to have a perfect on balance swing each and every time. Everything has to be perfectly correct for me to get results. He knows that it doesn't. This, in a lot of ways, is a bit of a mistake. You can almost see it in his approach, the way his eyes are looking. He's looking out away, which was where he was being pitched during this at bat, thinking fastball away and reacting into the breaking ball. And that's ultimately what he gets, as you see Sal set up. So, maybe Stanton felt a little bit of that. I thought this at the time. Sal Perez, he's a big dude. And when he moves, he kind of gives something away. This is a 3-1 pitch. There wasn't a whole lot going on. You feel him sitting up inside, right? So there he is. You feel that as a hitter. So maybe he was peaking a little bit. Maybe he was cheating a little bit, and you can't help but identify that. When you have big catchers, I always did. If you could throw a fastball away right here back to the other side of the plate, good on you, because if you're setting up inside like this, I'm looking inside like this because you put the glove right underneath my arms and you're setting up underneath. So maybe he was peeking or looking just a little bit. That probably makes a little bit more sense. But really, this is just us talking about where Stanton is as a hitter. He's in a great place right now. He's locked in on mistakes that are coming, and when those mistakes are coming, he's not missing them.
He always was a good hitter against left-handed pitching as well.
Yeah.
Because they can't get that, they get back. Those righties with the big sliders always, get them to chase a little bit more. But Stanton has always been very good against lefty pitching, and especially if you're not a super hard throwing lefty, he's got a huge advantage. But
let me throw this in, right? Let me throw one more quick thing in here, because I remember this, Joe, and you'll remember it as well, because when we go back to 2017 and we talk about Stanton and the adjustments he was making, remember he had just been hit in the face. And he was kind of still dealing with it, and he was uncomfortable. and his approach at the time, because he did not recognize or identify the inside pitch the way other guys do, and so he was very cautious, very, very, very aware. And if you remember, when he finally came back, he was a little flinchy on the inside part of the plate. And so the reason he made this adjustment to move off the plate, you see there's plenty of space there, and close off his stance, was to give himself more space to see the ball inside. And now he's in over the years, he trusts what he's doing. So interesting, right? He's standing a little bit more upright right there, but kind of just cleans out that inside pitch. Again, it's a breaking ball. This is probably 85 miles an hour, probably not much more than that, but it's a pitch that he had to work down into the zone, and look what he ultimately did with it. But again, that swing adjustment that he made back in 17 to getting himself in a better hitting position. We talk about it all the time, getting yourself into a good hitting position. And this was an adjustment that he had to make so that in his mind, he could trust what he was doing, know that getting hit in the face wasn't going to happen again, or that he knew that he was going to trust his reaction to not getting hit in the face again,
Oh yeah. Let's get one more look. Goodbye. Yeah, he's a force. That's why I always just say, I've covered a lot of players, a lot of great players, but Giancarlo Stanton, obviously great player, but a force. So it's like, because he makes the sport, my view, maybe I'm saying it wrong, but I don't think so, it's how I see it, is he makes it physical. He's like, he could dominate the sport physically. And and Holly, you noted about covering him and then being in the press box all those years in that Lone Depot, then Marlins Park. Just how big that outfield was. And keep in mind, they moved the fences in about 2 or 3 times since the original in 2012, which I always had discussions with David Sampson and others about why would you build this ballpark no one could hit a homer in, when at the time Stanton was like 22 years old and could have been was your most marketable, and you just build this cavernous place where no one could homer but him, but that's another story. But you could just see where the outfield, because you're looking at, and you probably saw it in Colorado too, big outfields, right? You can, from the press box, you see where the outfielders are playing. So with Stanton in like a Marlins Park, they're in no doubles immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes him more likely to get a flare hit. That just helps his game. Because he could, as long as I wonder, his BABIP hasn't always been great, but you would think it would be higher based on all he do is hit the ball, because guys are usually way back or in the outfield way spread out, that he could drop a flare in front of them probably more regularly than others. But that's just an observation.
Oh, no, you're right. And it should feel, it always did. I mean, that was the confidence that I enjoyed, getting to play in Colorado, was just that, even taking it to the next level. And let this be a message to kids. Right. If you're playing on a big field, you're not hitting the ball over the wall. The outfielders have to play. Look, everything's an advantage. And it's such a good point, Joe, because, I'm a player, so I understand both sides. I always understood in Colorado, we talked about it all the time. Now, we didn't talk about it on the offensive side because not everybody wanted to think this way, but that's the way that I saw it. And you obviously reference, Marlins Park. And, the idea was that, if you got the ball over the infield and you got jammed, it should be a double. I mean, like if you get out of the box running, because the outfielders are playing no doubles just naturally, because the outfield's so big, they're so deep. I remember seeing the right guys doing the right thing. I mean, I've seen guys before bounce singles up the middle and slide into second base with a double. And you're like, well, wait a minute, what just happened here? This is a routine base hit. Yeah, well, your center fielder's, he's starting out at 350. He's got a long way to come to get that slow roller that you just hit up the middle that the shortstop dove for. And somebody's got to go get the baseball. So, there's ways of exploiting all of that. Now, Stanton's not your guy for that, but my point being is that it definitely makes you a better hitter, but you still can take it to the next level. So instead of being discouraged by the size of the yard or the size of the fences, look at it like an opportunity to get lots of doubles and triples. I mean, I always felt like that was one of my advantages in my career in Colorado, and I had a very good run there for the few years that I was there, was simply that I was looking every blade of grass was mine. And if I hit a weak jam shot over the first baseman's head, man, I was standing on 2, maybe thinking 3, because I knew the right fielder, he had to run a football field to go get that baseball. So while he's running after the ball, I'm going to be running on the other side of that. I'm not going to just take a single and, round first base. I'm like, this is going to be a double every time. And there's ways to get extra base hits. So wherever your field is, you got to look for those advantages. I loved Wrigley. Wrigley was always so fun to me because Wrigley was a field, Wrigley Field. Depending on the way the wind blew, it was a different ballpark every day. I mean, it was like you were either pitching in one of the hardest pitchers parks or one of the greatest hitters parks. So depending on what the wind did that day, you would have different things that were going on, but you had to be ready for it. So it was always part of your game preparation. When I played in Chicago in 2004 and 2005, that was part of my daily routine. Was like, okay, what's the weather today? What's going on? Which way's the wind blowing? Because the wind there always changed. And so if the wind was blowing out, you were like, all right, stay through the baseball, stay on the baseball, get the ball in the air. You're going to run around the bases at least once because you're going to probably find it. At a minimum, find the basket. But if that wind was blowing in and you were like, oh, no, it's going to be one of those days. The outfielders are coming in. Anything in the air is going to get caught. You had to find other ways to be creative to generate offense. So it was a bit of a challenge, but it was a fun challenge because it changed all the time.
Yeah, great points as always. And reminder, everyone, please like and subscribe. We're growing this channel. We just have a few more minutes left because we got to get out of here before 1 full hour. I want to talk about the Dodgers-Padres series and just ask you, Holly, has that become the biggest rivalry in Major League Baseball right now? We've seen a lot of emotion. We've seen the very energized. We've seen guys playing with edge. Manny Machado's ticking everybody off. He's got everyone in San Diego hating Ken Rosenthal, my buddy there, because he wrote a piece that Manny could be a little bit over the top. So everyone's getting defensive. And then, the Dodgers being the Dodgers. What's going on in that series? And are we watching the new Yankees-Red Sox?
Well, first I'm going to say this because I do have the authority and earn the right to speak to this because I played in Los Angeles for well over a decade, 6 years in Los Angeles and with the organization. That's who I was drafted by. So, and most fans probably still remember me more as a Dodger than anything else I was in my career. But with that being said, yeah, but I just think it's talked about more, Joe. That's the answer to the question. This always existed. This existed when I played. We probably felt it. Maybe let's just be fair. We probably felt it a little bit more with the Giants, but that was more. It was a little bit more angry. This is, to me, two really, really good teams kind of stepping into the moment. They're a little bit more closely related. I mean, obviously the Dodgers and the Giants goes all the way back to New York days. So that's something that was, brought out to the West Coast. Now this relationship, I mean, you're talking about two teams that are, I think, almost, maybe less than 100 miles away. I mean, San Diego is not that far from Los Angeles at all. In fact, if you live in Los Angeles, you're not even out in the wilderness at all. I mean, it's like going from one city to the next, and it's almost like they're right next to each other. There's just a little bit of coastline on the drive, but then boom, you're in San Diego. So, this is a rivalry that, has always been there. I remember playing it. I remember the postseason in 96, 97. We were duking it out with them the exact same way that you're watching this play out. I mean, it was very similar. In fact, one year we took care of business.
Jack Murphy Stadium there.
Yeah, one year we took care of business, and then the next year they took care of us. In fact, they stole the National League West crown from us. We were in position to have it, and they came in and they took care of business in Los Angeles by beating us. And if I remember correctly, the last game of the year was like a 15 inning game. I mean, it was just this death match that we couldn't get a run. Neither team could get a run across. And it was just going down to the end of the wire. And of course, it's the last game of the season. We were both going to the playoffs, but we were playing for the division, title. And so it would affect the playoff scenario in the picture. But, this relationship between two, you love to see it. I mean, who doesn't, right? You've got star players on both sides, star power. This is, these are two teams that have an identity that are in a position to say, we're the best team. We should represent the National League in the World Series. Both of these teams certainly have merit to that. The Dodgers have been a little bit more out in front of this, but at the same time, the Padres have shown this incredible willingness to not only spend some money, bring in some players, develop some players, make some crazy trades, transform themselves overnight. I remember, they had Juan Soto. They just had Juan Soto, Joe. I mean, this is, and you said, okay, this is not the way. This isn't going to work for us. We need to move Soto. But in moving Soto, they made a brilliant trade that filled out their roster, and is half of the team you're watching on the field today.
Yeah, Michael King,
right,
who was the Marlins draft pick at one point.
Right,
Yeah.
is a result of Juan Soto. So in so many ways, Soto has got his footprints all over this. So, but with that being said, here's the thing. I'll say this, and I love it. And the San Diego Padres have really come together, and they've created an identity. I think early in the season there was a lot of question about who they are and who they were going to be, but they were in a position where it was like, okay, they could be good, but they got to get things moving in the right direction. They made an early season trade for Arise, who impacted the top of the lineup. They've got their star players playing like star players. Now, Manny Machado's been as consistent as just about anybody in the game over the last few seasons. That dude showed up. But I think Tatis really, to me, has been the guy that has been, okay, we've seen him do things that others in this sport can't do, but we need to see that again. And we need to see it a little bit more consistently. And now you're seeing it. And so now you can go 1-for-1 with Shohei Ohtani. You can play that game of, we've got a star, you've got a star. We've got some starting pitching, you got some starting pitching. We've got some guys at the end of the game that throw really hard. We've got some guys at the end of the game that can throw really hard. We've got a loyal fan base. It might not be as big as yours, Los Angeles, but we've got a loyal fan base. And you saw them come out the last two. I mean, they just packed out that place. It's there. It exists. And that idea that we have to do something different than who we are in order to beat a team that we feel at times might be superior to us, or have more money than us, or have a bigger fan base than us, gets eliminated. And that's what makes the Padres dangerous. So to answer your question, Joe, absolutely. This has become one of baseball's favorite rivalries. And I got to be honest with you, I love it because the games come on later. And so everything I got going on during the day is okay.
You get to see it.
I get home in plenty of time for the start of the game. So we've been good about this. So it's been great. I'm enjoying it as much as and of course, being out here on the East Coast, you tend to, lock in on what's going on out here. But knowing that game's kind of sitting back there and just diving in, I really do think it's been the conversation, the starting point, for most of Major League Baseball. To your point, 100%. This is a rivalry that's got some teeth, it's got some legs, and it's not going to be over tonight. Somebody's going to win tonight and move on. Somebody's going to lose and go home. I think all it's going to do is fuel the conversation for next year, because here we go. Now all of a sudden we've got two teams that are heavyweights, separated by maybe 100 miles and a similar fan base. It's the same state, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? It's the San Diegans will tell you we're not the people from Los Angeles, but you're close enough. You know what I mean? And we're all in the same state. So it is definitely something that is fun to watch, fun to see, and tonight's going to be an exciting one.
Yeah, and I'll drop this before we get out of here, because we do have to get out of here. If the Dodgers get eliminated, or they don't get to the World Series and they do make a managerial change from Dave Roberts, two names I've heard: Skip Schumacher and maybe Mark Kotsay, to keep in mind for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So that should be interesting. Holly, quickly, great show. One last statement, because we got to get out of here in 30 seconds.
Well, it's fun. I say this to my kids here all the time. I know that we're always busy on our phones. We're busy doing all this other stuff. This is the best time of year. This is great baseball. Tune in, guys. Put your phone down for a little while. Find Dad. Dad, get in here. We got to watch this game tonight. We're going to sit around and enjoy it. That's what baseball is all about. It brings the family together. It's a great father-son sport. And there's great baseball on. So tune in. I understand college football on the weekends and the NFL and everything else that's going on, but just dive into a few of these series, dive into a few of these games. They're an awful lot of fun to watch, and it's a great time for you to bond with your dad with your sons. And, if you don't love baseball, maybe you will, because I'll tell you what, every one of these games is not disappointed.
Correct. And the beauty, we got 2 Game 5s. San Diego against LA, and then we got Cleveland, Detroit, I believe, tomorrow night. But with that, we got to get out of here. Everyone, thanks again for all the support on the channel. We'll keep growing this. Thanks to Todd Hollandsworth. The Hitting with Holly podcast keeps growing. And we will be back next week, and we will see everybody in the next video.